I have to admit something. Until 6 months ago, I knew nothing about Ibrahim Traoré. Like many, I had only heard of Burkina Faso through negative news about poverty and instability. But as I began to dig deeper into this young man and what he is doing for his country, I realized I had been deceived by the Western media. The true story of Burkina Faso will astonish you as much as it astonished me, because what I just discovered is not only shocking, but it also completely changes the way we see Africa's potential. Ibrahim Traoré, the 34-year-old president of Burkina Faso, has done what international agricultural experts insisted was impossible. He turned an arid West African nation into a rice exporter to Asia in just 18 months. And the secret lies in the seeds their ancestors have used for thousands of years. The problem: a nation on the brink. To understand why this is so earth-shattering, we have to go back to 2020. Burkina Faso was one of the world's poorest nations, with 80% of its population dependent on agriculture, yet it had to import nearly 60% of its food needs. The country faced three immense problems that led international experts to believe that rice self-sufficiency was an impossible dream. First was devastating climate change. Rainfall had decreased by 40% in the last 30 years, temperatures had risen by 1.5 degrees Celsius, and desertification had swallowed 25% of its arable land. Every year, Burkina Faso lost 105,000 hectares of agricultural land to drought and erosion, with only 18,000 hectares left for rice cultivation and yields of just 2 tons per hectare, while the national demand was 350,000 tons of rice per year. The gap between production and consumption was an unbridgeable chasm. The second problem was dependency on foreign technology and seeds. For 40 years, international development organizations had persuaded Burkina Faso to abandon its traditional rice varieties in favor of high-yield hybrids from Asia. However, these seeds required massive amounts of irrigation, expensive chemical fertilizers, and pesticides that poor farmers could not afford. As a result, actual yields often reached only 30 to 40% of their potential, and farmers became even poorer due to skyrocketing input costs. The third problem was the remaining colonial economic structure. Burkina Faso was forced to export raw materials like cotton, gold, and peanuts at low prices, only to import processed food at prices 5 to 7 times higher. For rice, they had to import 210,000 tons annually at a cost of $95 million, while exporting the same value in gold did nothing to create jobs or add value for the people. This vicious cycle kept the country perpetually dependent on international markets and unable to achieve food sovereignty. For decades, the World Bank, IMF, and development organizations insisted that the only solution was more aid, more debt to buy Western technology, and specialization in raw material exports. They presented figures, reports, and recommendations that seemed irrefutable. According to a 2021 World Bank report, Burkina Faso would need at least $2 billion in irrigation infrastructure investment and $500 million for high-tech crop seeds over the next 15 years to achieve rice self-sufficiency. They recommended continuing to import rice from Thailand and Vietnam because it was more economically efficient. They were dead wrong. Until Ibrahim Traoré appeared in September 2022 and completely changed the game with a bold decision: to return to ancestral wisdom and the indigenous seeds Burkina Faso had used for millennia. The revolutionary scientist Ibrahim Traoré is not your typical politician. Born in 1988 in Bondokouy, a small rural village, he grew up in a poor farming family with 12 siblings. His father was a primary school teacher and a farmer. His mother sold vegetables at the market to support the family. From a young age, Traoré worked in the fields, growing sorghum, corn, and peanuts with his family. He understood the hardships of farmers, knew the feeling of watching crops wither from drought, and had seen his family have to sell cattle to buy imported rice during lean years. After graduating from the Prytanée Militaire du Kadiogo Military Academy with honors, Traoré pursued a master's degree in geology at the University of Ouagadougou. He was particularly interested in the soil and climate of the Sahel and his master's thesis on the optimization of groundwater use in semi-arid agriculture was highly acclaimed. Unlike officers who only knew military theory, Traoré was a true scientist with a deep understanding of sustainable agriculture. His rise to power occurred under special circumstances. On September 30th, 2022, amid worsening security and public discontent over the previous government's failed economic policies, a group of young officers led by Traoré carried out a bloodless change of government. Remarkably, this move received enthusiastic support from the people, especially farmers and the youth. While the initial international reaction was negative, with the EU and ECOWAS imposing sanctions, the people of Burkina Faso took to the streets to celebrate and show their support. When Traoré assumed the presidency, his first message was simple yet resolute. We will no longer beg from anyone. Burkina Faso will feed itself with the hands and minds of the Burkinabe people. We have everything we need: land, water, sun, and most importantly, the iron will of a resilient people. But unlike the empty promises of past politicians, Traoré had prepared a specific, scientific, and actionable plan based on 3 clear phases. Phase 1: Retour aux sources, return to the roots, October 2022 to March 2023. The goal was to collect and propagate forgotten indigenous rice varieties while mobilizing the entire nation to preserve traditional seeds. This was done by sending survey teams to every village, meeting with elders to learn ancient agricultural knowledge, and establishing 350 community seed banks. The main resources were manpower and folk wisdom, along with a $2 million budget from cutting administrative spending. The expected result was the recovery of 12 indigenous rice varieties and the training of 5,000 farmers in traditional techniques. Phase 2: La Grande Mobilisation, the Great Mobilization, April to September 2023. Building on Phase 1, this stage expanded trial cultivation from 1,000 to 15,000 hectares nationwide. The challenges were convincing farmers to switch back from hybrids and the need for irrigation during the dry season. The solution was to mobilize 100,000 youth volunteers to dig wells and canals by hand and to organize best rice-growing village competitions to create positive motivation. Phase 3, L'Envol, the takeoff, starting October 2023. The long-term vision is to turn Burkina Faso into a high-quality rice export hub for West Africa within 5 years. The plan involved creating a model for sustainable agriculture replicable by other Sahel countries, establishing agricultural cooperatives, and developing processing technology to increase added value. And the most important thing that made all the difference: it would all be done by the people of Burkina Faso, with the resources and intellect of Burkina Faso. No aid from the World Bank, no loans from the IMF, no dependency on Western technology, no need for foreign experts, only the power of national unity and ancestral wisdom, tested over thousands of years. And then, on October 15th, 2022, the miracle began with a campaign called Operation Riz d'Or, Operation Golden Rice. The revolution in action, a nation mobilized. October 15th, 2022 will be recorded as the day Burkina Faso changed forever. There were no loudspeakers or top-down coercion. Just a simple message passed from mouth to mouth, from village to village: bring the seeds of our grandparents. It is time for Mother Earth to shine again. The people's reaction was immediate and more powerful than even Traoré had imagined. Within 48 hours, over 300,000 people from 13 provinces had spontaneously mobilized without any official directive from the government. In the Boucle du Mouhoun province, known as the breadbasket of Burkina Faso, over 45,000 farmers organized themselves into 300 working groups. Using traditional tools, they dug irrigation canals with an ancient zigzag method, reclaiming 3,200 hectares of fallow land in the first week alone. Everyone from 12-year-old children to 80-year-old men participated under the slogan, "Every drop of sweat today is a grain of rice tomorrow." In the arid plateau central region, 28,000 people created a miracle by building hundreds of small earthen dams along valleys to capture rainwater, creating a vast natural irrigation system. A 67-year-old farmer named Yakuba Sawadogo shared, "My grandfather used to say, 'The land of Burkina Faso is not poor. We have just forgotten how to speak to Mother Earth. Now we are learning that language again.'" In the Est region, 52,000 people organized traditional seed fairs where elders shared rare heirloom seeds for free. One 78-year-old woman, Fatimata Wedraogo, contributed 50 kilograms of Riz Rouge ancestral, ancient red rice, that she had preserved in clay jars for 40 years. "I kept these seeds for the day the country would need them. Today is that day," she said, her eyes welling with tears. As a result, 47 different indigenous rice varieties were collected and propagated. The story of Burema Konate, a 45-year-old motorcycle mechanic from the city, was typical. He closed his shop to return to his home village with his family. "I can fix motorcycles anywhere," he said, "but the opportunity to build a future for my children doesn't come along every day." He described the feeling of working the fields as being reborn, like finding a long-lost part of myself. The science of simplicity, a highly organized system. But Operation Golden Rice was not just about spirit, it was about science and organization, operating under a system as sophisticated as any modern management project. Structure, a star-shaped distribution model was used, with Ouagadougou as the hub. Village coordinators, elected based on merit, served as unpaid gardiens du patrimoine, guardians of the heritage, ensuring information flowed without bureaucracy. Labor. Work was divided by skill. Men dug canals, women selected seeds and planted, elders passed on knowledge, and children helped with watering. No one was left behind. Coordination. A modernized smoke signal system using simple mobile phone texts provided daily updates on weather and progress, allowing the entire campaign to function as a single living organism. Conflict resolution. The traditional African Palabra, Democratic Council, was used to resolve disputes openly and by consensus. Only 12 serious conflicts were reported in the first 6 months, a stunningly low number. Technology. Simple but highly effective tools were leveraged, from homemade soil moisture meters to drip irrigation systems made from recycled plastic bottles. A community innovation system ensured that small breakthroughs, like a new organic fertilizer recipe, were documented and spread rapidly. Case study. A turning point. The biggest challenge was water. The solution came from Adama Kabore, a 58-year-old farmer who proposed a multi-tiered rainwater harvesting system using interconnected 200-liter plastic drums and bamboo pipes. This system could store 50,000 liters of water, providing irrigation for 3 dry months. They then used a synchronized planting method with a local drought-resistant rice variety called Riz de Mang, which has a short 95-day growth cycle. After 14 weeks, the results were astounding. Germination rates soared from 65% for hybrids to 92% for local seeds. Water consumption fell by 47%. Input costs plummeted by 75%. The real turning point came on March 15, 2023, the day of the first harvest festival. The harvest of a revolution. The harvest numbers stunned international experts. The average yield reached 4.2 tons per hectare, a 110% increase over the 2 tons per hectare from previous hybrid seeds. Total production hit 63,000 tons from 15,000 hectares, exceeding the initial target by 40%. Production costs fell to just $280 per hectare, a 57% saving. The rice quality was export grade with a nutritional profile that was a game changer. 18% protein versus 12% in regular rice, double the iron and zinc, and a 30% lower glycemic index. But the most impressive figures were psychological. A survey by the University of Ouagadougou found that 87% of farmers felt proud of their cultural identity, up from 34%, and 92% believed in the country's ability to be self-sufficient, up from 18%. The trend of rural youth migration to cities reversed, with 78% now wanting to stay in their villages. With tears in his eyes, Traoré declared, "Today, we are not just harvesting rice. We are harvesting pride, harvesting hope, harvesting proof that the people of Burkina Faso can do anything when we unite and believe in ourselves. This is just the beginning of a larger revolution, the revolution to reclaim our food sovereignty and our national dignity." The broader transformation was immediate and visible. Economic, agricultural GDP grew by 23% in 2023. Farmer income increased by 85%. 180,000 new jobs were created. Rice imports plummeted, saving $65 million, while exports to Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Senegal began. Social, 78% of rural families could now eat rice at least twice a day, up from 34%. School attendance rose from 68% to 84%. Child malnutrition fell by 28%. Testimonials, stories poured in. A teacher, Aminata Traoré, said her students no longer had to miss school to work. A merchant, Bukari Sana, said customers now preferred local rice, even at a higher price. A farmer, Mariam Ouedraogo, spoke of her pride, saying, "My grandchildren say our rice is tastier than Thai rice." Psychological self-efficacy, the belief in one's ability to control one's life, rose from 23% to 89% among rural populations. New cultural traditions emerged, like the annual Seed Festival. Satellite photos confirmed the change, showing lush green fields where there was once brown, arid land. The ripple effect, a world takes notice. The impact of Burkina Faso's rice revolution spread globally. Regional, Senegal launched a similar project. Chad sent 200 agricultural engineers to study in Burkina Faso. Niger proposed a Sahel Seed Alliance. Burkina Faso, once an aid recipient, became a regional leader and knowledge provider. International. The World Bank acknowledged the unexpectedly positive results, but remained cautious. The expert community was split, with some calling it a replicable paradigm shift, and others dismissing it as a short-term anomaly. Media coverage was polarized, with Al Jazeera hailing it as an African miracle, while Western outlets were more reserved. Academic and investment research on the Burkina Faso model exploded in journals like Nature and at universities like Harvard and Oxford. Investment funds began taking notice. The diaspora, the Burkinabe community abroad, responded with immense pride. Remittances and investment from the diaspora soared. A return migration trend began, with 3,400 Burkinabes returning home from Europe in 2023. Professor Kwame Anthony Appiah from Princeton University commented, "Burkina Faso has done what we thought was impossible, proving that Africa doesn't need to be developed, but can develop itself on its own terms. This is not just an economic success, it is a revolution in consciousness and identity. This is not a short-term phenomenon. Traoré has a clear long-term vision. Phase 2, from January to December 2024, is named Consolidation et Expansion. Consolidation and expansion. The plan is to expand cultivation from 15,000 hectares